Another issue that's on this roll is immigration. And Madam Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to immediately consider H.R. 2321, the Border Surge Response and Resilience Act. For far too long, Democrats denied the crisis caused by Biden's open border rhetoric. This bipartisan bill will ensure that DAH develops a plan and has the resources it needs to address migrant surges and secure our border, something clearly missing from the current administration. Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment in the record, along with any extraneous material, immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And here to explain the amendment is the lead Republican on the House Homeland Security Committee, my good friend and colleague, John Katko from New York, and I would yield him as much time as he may consume.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition to moving the previous question so that we can consider the bipartisan legislation I introduced along with several of my colleagues to address the crisis along the southwest border and provide resources for the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security who are serving on the front lines of this security nightmare and humanitarian nightmare created by the policies of this administration. The Border Surge Response Act and the Border Surge Response and Resilience Act is a common sense approach for preparing for future migrant surges and is a direct response to a recommendation of the bipartisan and effective Homeland Security Advisory Council, which I hope will be reconstituted by the current administration. I often hear from my friends on the other side of the aisle accusing Republicans of complaining about problems rather than offering solutions. Well, today, we are providing the opportunity to vote on a common sense, bipartisan, and thoughtful solution. I just returned from my second trip to the border in recent weeks, and any of us who have traveled there recently can observe what is happening and can attest to just how bad the crisis on the ground really is. At the border itself, it's wide open. The wall construction has stopped. Border Patrol agents have told us that if the wall is constructed, 80% of the drug trafficking activity is focused and funneled to other areas where they can easily interdict the drug traffickers. I was a federal organized crime prosecutor for 20 years before coming to Congress. And I worked on the border as a federal organized crime prosecutor going after cartels. And I can tell you that they own the border. And if someone wants to cross the border, they have to pay. Chinese are paying $50,000 to $70,000 per person. Mexicans and Central Americans are paying $4,000 a person to come across. Every single day that this crisis goes on, the cartels are being enriched to the tune of at least $15 million a day. A day. And at the last month, it's highly likely they probably were enriched to the tune of close to $1 billion in a month. The Border Patrol agents are despondent. They're being pulled off the line at least 40, 50% at a time in the Rio Grande Valley sector alone to deal with the crisis. The drug traffickers are smart enough to know if I throw 100 people across the border over here, all the agents got to come off and deal with them. And then that place that they came off from, we're going to go right across there with the drugs. In the Rio Grande Valley sector alone, 2,000% increase in fentanyl coming across the border. Fentanyl is killing our kids all over this country. It's mixed with heroin, it's killing our kids. That's what the Border Patrol agents are telling us, is all they want to do is be able to enforce the laws on the books. They want to have the ability to do so. And they're not having the ability to do so because the administration changed the policies on January 22nd. And they say there's a direct correlation. Yes, there's problems in Central America. They've been there for 20, 30 years. They haven't changed. And if I had kids down there, I'd bring them too, up to the border. But there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way. And running across the border and creating this crisis is a wrong way. Now let me tell you what I saw at the detention centers, like Donna. People were put in pens, for lack of a better term. 30, 40 people are supposed to be in there. I saw hundreds. I sent a picture to my wife. There were so many kids. They were all wrapped up in aluminum blankets. You couldn't see anything other than the aluminum blankets. They were literally stacked next to each other like cordwood. Not a single child was tested. And they're released from that facility because they just can't keep them there, and they're released without being tested. When we were at the border, we kind of counted a couple of people at the border at midnight. The next morning at 9 a.m. on a flight to Dallas-Fort Worth, they were on that flight. No ID who they were. They put them on a plane without identification. They put them on a plane highly likely without testing because they said they're not testing them right away. But when they do test, they know that 10 to 15% of these kids test positive for COVID. So they are putting people in our communities all over this country, not telling the people where they're going, those communities that they're coming, and they're coming in there oftentimes not being tested for COVID and obviously probably positive. That's what's going on. We're spending, in a Donna facility alone, we're spending millions of dollars a day to deal with this. And there's nothing more tragic than seeing an 11-year-old girl who's sexually assaulted on her way up to the border, who was pregnant there. That's what's going on. That's the reality of the situation, and it's an unforced error that we didn't need to have. And the administration, candidly, was caught short. But candidly, too, previous administrations were caught short with border surges. And so I'm not here to complain about the situation. I'm here to offer a solution. And the solution is our bill, which I mentioned. In addition to ensuring future preparedness along the border, this provision would create a $1 billion fund to be made available in the support of our frontline enforcement personnel. It requires transparent metrics that were triggered when certain events happen, and it supports border security and law enforcement professionals. This funding would help prevent a humanitarian crisis from spiraling out of control as it has on this one and it has on others before it, candidly. And if you don't know this, I will tell you. The money that's being spent to deal with this crisis now is being taken away from the funds set aside for the salaries of our law enforcement professionals on the border. That's a fact. We are going to need a massive supplement just to make sure that our Border Patrol agents can get paid. So I urge my colleagues in a bipartisan fashion to support the security of the United States. And this is not about arguing what President Biden did on January 20th. This is about saying going forward when we have these crises, they will occur again, that we are ready next time. There's money set aside. There is a plan. And when certain things happen, the money kicks in and we're ready to go. So that's what I'm asking my colleagues to support, the frontline men and women by supporting this provision. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.